Welcome back, folks. Thanks so much for being with us as always. A little bird told me that in order, I don't know, is it the law in Pope County? In order for you to have a meeting, it's got to be in secret now. That's a joke. I got jokes. Hey, we've got Larry Walker back with us. He's from Citizens for a Better Pope County. Larry, how are you this morning?
Man, I'm doing all right, Paul, and I'll apologize up front. I've been under the weather a little bit, so if my voice is a little scratchy, I apologize.
I understand. That's it's going around these days, this time of year. It's going to probably get worse before it gets better in terms of, around here they're burning fields, and so that makes it really difficult. So, Larry, what can you tell us? Last week you were on, we were talking about casinos in Pope County, everything that's going on behind the scenes, the mechanisms to try to get a casino or to try to stop it in your case. But have the courts decided anything yet?
Yeah, we had our first hearing on Monday, and there were two motions that were brought forth on Monday. One was a motion to dismiss the case by the defendants, and that was denied pretty immediately by the judge. It was based on procedural issues, and he denied that, said the case is going to move forward. The other motion was the motion to intervene by the Cherokee Nation, and that was a bit of an interesting discussion. They eventually allowed them in. The way a motion to intervene.
What does that mean when you say intervene? I don't have any idea what that means.
Yeah, so a motion to intervene is generally, so like in our case, we had the plaintiff and the defendant, and we brought the case. And then there was another party that thought they had a right to be in the case as well. So they tried to intervene into the case, generally because they have some sort of interest that they feel needs to be protected in the case that the defendant is not properly able to defend for them. And so in this case, the Cherokee Nation made a motion to intervene because that they had received that letter, a resolution of support from the quorum court, and they felt like they needed to be in the case to represent their interest in having that letter. The judge, so the way that motion to intervene works is generally there are two ways to go about it. There's a intervention by right, and there's a permissive intervention. The intervention by right, essentially the judge denied because he said it came down to essentially if the meetings hadn't happened, if all the stuff, all this stuff hadn't gone on, that's what this whole thing is about. And so you may not have even had that letter. But what it came down to is they said, well, they then went on to say, we have a $38 million contract with the county. The judge rebutted with that to say, but isn't that just an expectancy? I mean, that only goes into effect if you actually receive the license. So we really don't even have a right according to that, because that contract isn't operative until after the license is issued. So everything we're talking about is pre-license. So it was an interesting discussion, but he went ahead and allowed them to intervene into the case, join into the case, but with certain conditions. And he hasn't issued the order of conditions yet of what that will be. But essentially it came down to, because there's allegations in the case that involve them, secret meetings with the justices that they were alleged to have been in, the Cherokee Nation. He said because allegations have been brought forth against them in the case, they have a right to, or not right, they're permissively allowed to be in the case.
Interesting.
Yeah, so it was a real interesting hearing on that point.
Well, it seems like the judge is aware of the secret meetings and the controversy surrounding these secret meetings.
I think he read through the pleadings that were brought forth in the case. He was made aware in those, and of course at this point all they are allegations, and he views it that way. But I think his concern, it seemed to be, if evidence is brought forth to prove those meetings out, then we may have a different ballgame here.
So refresh everyone. Citizens for a Better Pope County. The lawsuit. You guys are bringing the lawsuit against the government, right? It's against the county. Is it against the city? Or what, just kind of lay that out.
It's against the county and the county judge and the quorum court members for the resolution that they issued to the Cherokee Nation because we had the local ordinance in place that said before a resolution can be given or a letter of support given by a county judge, that it has to first be referred out to the voters for a vote, and that vote never happened. And so essentially our claim is they broke the law by issuing the resolution before they ever sent that out to the voters.
It was a county ordinance, and and there was a vote to create the county ordinance, correct?
Yeah, it was a 70-30 vote. I believe that vote, we had 18,000 people that voted in that last election, and it was nearly 13,000 people voted in favor of this ordinance.
So they want to have their say before the county quorum court gives gives the contract to, in this case, the Cherokee Nation.
Right.
And the county has completely ignored that ordinance, and why? What at least is their argument? What's their argument going to be?
Well, and this is going to get, you'll find this real interesting. Is so on their argument is that the local ordinance contradicts Amendment 100. That the Amendment 100, in their view, gives the power to write a letter or issue a resolution to the county judge and to the quorum court. Now, it's real interesting because in Amendment 100, it never gives them that power. What it does is it says, let's say, for instance, in Amendment 100, it gives the Racing Commission the power to issue the license. It says the Racing Commission shall issue a license. So it's very clear. However, when it gets to the quorum court in that letter of support, it says that the applicant must obtain a letter of support or a resolution from the quorum court. It doesn't ever say that they must issue one. There's no power vested in them to do so. It just says it, and then there's no mechanisms in the amendment to say, well, what mechanism, what procedures should happen to trigger them giving that letter. None of those details are laid out. And, we have laws all over. We have amendments that are made all the time that are vague, and then localities or legislatures come in and they put laws and structure around those things to provide more meat to them. And that's essentially what this ordinance does. Is it doesn't contradict Amendment 100, just where Amendment 100 didn't have any information or procedures for the localities. The local ordinance comes in and fills in some of those gaps.
Yeah, I mean, from what I'm hearing from you, it just seems like it's kind of it's assumed that are left to the local governments to figure out how they want to they want to get to that process, how they want to get that application to the commission. And so, I mean, I guess let's say that you guys come out victorious on this. Are there? I'm just curious politically. I mean, is there anybody out there in Pope County that disagrees with what some of these JPs have done? Are there people out there who are saying, "I'm going to run for county judge against County Judge Cross because I really don't think he's being a proper executive. He should know that we had to have a vote if we were going to go forward."
Yeah, and there's a lot of people on both sides of the aisle that are mad about this thing. That are upset at what's happened, at how it's been handled by the county and what they've done. It's, even as late into the summer, on June the 11th, there was a quorum court meeting, a special called meeting regarding the local ordinance and how or what they might do to enact it. And the judge makes a statement in that meeting that he says that he says, some of us or some people may not like the ordinance. Some people may think it's unconstitutional. And he goes on to say, but all laws are laws until proven otherwise in court. And it was really ironic that he made that statement in June 11th, and then he comes back in 2 months later and completely ignores that law. Now, what they did in August the 13th, when they came to the quorum court meeting, they issued the resolution. This is where, to me, it gets really interesting. They went that day and they said, all right, they give these big speeches, and they basically say, we're going to ignore it, and we're going to ignore it on the ground that if we actually put an election forward, it's illegal exaction. Illegal exaction means that it is a charge that can be brought against the government for misappropriation of government funds. So they're using taxpayer dollars incorrectly. Well, the ironic thing about that is their justification regarding this is based on an assumption. It's based on an opinion that they never sought a court's opinion about. And they just made their mind up that the ordinance was unconstitutional, and therefore they were going to illegally break that under the guise that it would be illegal exaction to actually implement it.
You mean to spend
the court
money on
never decided otherwise.
Yeah, but you're saying that they think spending money on a special election would be an illegal exaction?
Exactly. That's what they told the taxpayers. Now, fast forward. Let me give you something here. Just learned this last night. On Thursday, in 2 days, the quorum court is going to be discussing, quote unquote, ordinance 2018-042, which is the local ordinance. Evidently, at a workshop they had 2 weeks ago, they said that they were going to do this. There were no news outlets there that reported on this. And so I didn't know about it till yesterday. I had a justice call me and tell me about it, that they are going to put this forward on Thursday to repeal the local ordinance. Well, the funny thing about this, so now on Thursday, they're going to come forward. An ordinance that is currently the subject of litigation before a judge, they're going to try and repeal that ordinance that was voted in by 70% of the voters. They're going to do that. But what makes it even more ironic is the fact that when they justified this in August, they justified it on the grounds that it was already invalid because of the state constitution, that the state constitution nullified it from the get-go. So if it is actually invalid, if y'all really truly made your decision on August the 13th because you thought it was invalid, why in the world do you need to come and repeal it right now? Mm-hmm. It seems to me like they're admitting that it was probably valid on August the 13th.
Yeah. Now they know they've messed up. So does the quorum court have that authority to just, I mean, I'm assuming they do. They just take a vote and they repeal the ordinance, right?
They have, from what I understand on an ordinance, they have to repeal an ordinance with an ordinance. So they would have to create an ordinance that night, and you can repeal it with a supermajority vote. So it would have to be a 2/3 vote, which is 9 votes. And then they would also, because it's an ordinance, generally it has to go through 3 readings, which would be 3 months worth of meetings, and so they can suspend the rules though and do it that night of. But that also has to be done by a supermajority or 9 votes.
Do they have 9 votes?
How many
are on the court?
13.
Okay.
13 are there. They need 9, and honestly, if they're bringing it forward, I've got to believe that they've had the same straw polling that they've had on everything else.
Secret
and they've
meetings.
had these discussions, private discussions that they've had before, and they know how many votes they have.
Wow. So you're telling me right now, we're talking with Larry Walker, the Citizens for a Better Pope County. This meeting is going to take place in 2 days, or is it Thursday or Friday? Tomorrow. So you're telling me tomorrow night, Pope County may clear all obstacles. The Pope County Quorum Court may clear all obstacles that are left for them to getting a casino. What I would say is likely completely against the will of the people.
Well, against the will of the people, and honestly, I don't think it has a legal leg to stand on, really, because if they do it, it doesn't change what they did a month ago. When they acted a month ago, it was the law, and they broke the law. Willfully and knowingly, they broke the law a month ago. But I guess in their mind, they think that this kind of, like you said, this clears out some obstacles that are in their way. But just the audacity to have the discussion about it and to consider it while it's pending before a judge in court on something that 70% of your voters voted for, I wouldn't have the guts to do something like that.
Wow, that is huge news here that you're breaking, Larry. I mean, I'm kind of speechless. It's amazing what money can do to people's hearts. I mean, that's what I am thinking here. I mean, your local government was essentially, love casinos or hate them. I mean, they've got a lot of money. They're dangling a lot of potential money here for the county, and in a very short amount of time, people's minds in elected office have been swayed somehow.
Yeah, it's a sad state, and I don't know what's happened behind closed doors. I don't know what's going on I have no idea. I think I said it on the very first show. I wouldn't ever accuse anybody of taking private money or doing things like that, but just the fact that an entity can come into town and dangle for your community $38 million out there, and that be enough to sway the officials' minds to overcome the will of the people and the vote of the people, without it ever playing out before a judge in court. It's a sad state of affairs
Wow.
where we're at right now.
Wow, that's incredible. Yeah, it's like, it's you definitely are finding out who has principles, that approaches every situation by using their principles versus, people who just they're without principles. It's just amazing. Well, Larry, I want you to keep us posted on this. I want you to feel free to continue to use this medium, to get the message out. I guess if people don't want the justices of the peace to undo this ordinance tomorrow night, they need to show up and voice their concerns?
Absolutely. Show up, send them emails ahead of time. Let them hear the voice of the people that they need to let this thing lie until a court has a decision. Because let's say this thing goes through a court. Let's say the letter that is sitting before the Racing Commission right now gets unwound because of all the dealings that have happened in Polk County. And let's say we go back to square one. If they have repealed that ordinance and we're back to square one, the people no longer have that as a protection for them when they voted by 70% to have it. So that thing needs to be in place unless a court says otherwise.
I just got a text message in there. Somebody asking me to ask you, Larry, about the promises that were made originally by the county judge. Do you have a recollection of those promises?
I've got a whole list of them here that go back July 2018. Judge-elect at that point says, "I will do what the people of Polk County tell me to do with their vote. That's what I told them I would do. I will adhere to the wishes of the people." That was aired in the Courier on July the 15th, 2018. December 2018, after the election, Judge-elect Ben Cross, he says that the quorum court meeting, that as the incoming judge, maybe I can alleviate some quick rumor stuff right here. This body, the quorum court, adopted a resolution early on in unanimous opposition to the casino. The people of Polk County voted 60-40 against the casino in the November election. As your incoming judge, that makes it a moot point in my book. So I, as your incoming judge, am not going to issue a letter of support to any gaming institution. That's as simple as I can put it. Going back, that's the Courier, December 14th, says, "I was elected to represent the people. There's been a lot of talk that I'm for or against something. I'm not for or against it. I'm for what the people voted for." Those are direct quotes from Ben Cross, as issued by the Courier on those various dates.
And now it looks like, he's definitely for a casino. I mean, it's what it appears, right? I mean, he's for
So,
it.
I mean, it doesn't. I mean, everything the people want. I mean, the people have said 70-30. They don't want a casino. The people still say we don't want a casino. There were some calls. There was a call bank done the weekend before the August 13th meeting, in which we called 4 different districts of quorum court officials that we thought might potentially be swing votes on this thing. We talked to over 200 voters. Of those 200 voters, 71% of those 200 voters, this is August the 10th and 11th, the weekend before that 13th vote, of those 200 plus voters, 250, somewhere in there, over 70% still believe that we did not need to have a casino, and that if we were going to have one, there better be a local vote for it. Still over 70% in August, when we were calling those were the districts that were considered to be swing districts leading into that quorum court meeting. Polk County hasn't changed. Polk County doesn't want a casino. Polk County, if they're going to have one forced upon them, they want to have a say in what happens, and they want a local vote. And right now, the judge and the quorum court is completely acting contrary to that, and it goes against everything that was said leading up to here in their campaign promises, and even after they were elected in, that they would support the will of the people.
You've got a rogue county judge. You've got a rogue quorum court. They're going to meet tomorrow, folks, to try to undo the ordinance that they've already broken, that is now being litigated by a judge in a court. So, folks who are listening, get out there, and it's your government. These people work for you. They do not work for the Cherokee Nation. They work for you. And so remember that principle, and congenially and peacefully communicate that to your elected officials, and maybe you can shake them out of this apathy that they're in. Larry Walker, Citizens for a Better Pope County. I appreciate it, sir. Thank you so much for coming on. Keep us updated.
Thanks, Paul.
All righty, and feel better. Folks, we're going to take a break.